We're going to talk now about the phosphorus cycle. And unlike the carbon and the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle has been less well understood. And the impacts are still being studied and researched. So, phosphorus, as nitrogen and carbon, is an essential nutrient found in the macromolecules of humans and other organisms, and also in the molecule ATP molecules that transport energy. The phosphorus cycle is slow because most of the phosphorus exists in mineral deposits. So then the release of the phosphorus in nature is very slow. And phosphorus is a limiting nutrient, and therefore it controls also the growth rate of aquatic plants and also vegetation. Main environmental effects of the alteration of the phosphorus cycle are connected to the overuse of fertilizers and the causing the eutrophication process in lakes and oceans. And then also these eutrophication processes cause the deplete of oxygen, which creates dead zones. This figure shows the main components of the phosphorus cycle and the connections between each component. So in nature, phosphorus is mainly found in sedimentary rocks, and when these rocks are subject to weathering, they will release some of the phosphate. The phosphorus that contains is leached and it goes to water and soils, and this is one of the pathways of releasing of phosphorus. Phosphate compounds in the soil can be taken up by plants and from there transferred to animals that eat the plants. And we know how the trophic level works and the efficiency. And when plants and animals excrete wastes or die, phosphates may be taken up by detritivores and they will be also be returned to the soil. Phosphorus containing compounds may also be carried out in surface runoff of rivers, lakes, and oceans, where they are taken up by aquatic organisms. When phosphorus containing compounds from the bodies or wastes of marine organisms sink to the floor of the ocean, they will form now new sedimentary layers. And over long periods of time, these layers will start creating new minerals. It will go to the mineralization process, but this process can take up to from 20,000 to 100,000 years. So in this figure, I want to give you a picture of the and also total amounts of phosphorus in the different components of the phosphorus cycle in before human intervention. So phosphorus reservoirs are shown here in units of teragrams of phosphorus, and the fluxes are teragrams of phosphorus per year. So you can see that nearly 98% of the total phosphorus that it is on soil and biota is held in soils in a variety of forms, and the flux rate of soluble phosphorus to the oceans is estimated to be 2 to 3 teragrams of phosphorus per year. This before pre-human activities, okay? Then let's look at the new picture of the phosphorus cycle now, including human activities. So it is estimated that the flux of soluble phosphorus now entering the oceans has doubled, and it's about 2 to 3 teragrams of phosphorus per year. And it can go up to 4 to 6 teragrams of phosphorus per year. And this is because human activities such as the production of fertilizers, deforestation, and soil erosion have allowed discharging of the phosphorus into water systems. And this has led to the so-called and so-known eutrophication process. So as a reminder of what is the eutrophication process, it's a process that occurs when there is an excess of nutrients, but particularly phosphorus, because this is a limiting nutrient to algae. So when algae has sufficient or excessive amounts of phosphorus, they can grow without any limitation, and this will then when algae die, is decomposed by microbes that requires oxygen, and this depletes the oxygen of the water system, that can be oceans or lakes, and it creates what is called dead zones. And then the dead zones will kill all the living organisms in the area, so such as fish and shellfish and other animals. So this is a figure from the NASA Earth Observatory, where you can see all the dead zones all over the world. The majority of these dead zones occur at the mouth of rivers that are discharged to the ocean, and it's because they are bringing all the nutrients, including phosphorus, into the ocean, and it creates these anoxic zones. The size of the circles represent the area of the dead zone, that can go from zero point 0.1 square kilometers to 10,000 square kilometers. There is also, of course, a strong connection between population density with the region of where the dead zones are located, right? So you can see here a population density marked in brown color, and it goes 18 persons per square kilometer. So human alterations of the phosphorus cycle involve with several number of pathways that include phosphate rock extraction, crop cultivation with fertilizer application, livestock production with manure generation, and food consumption with wastes production. So when we talk about phosphate rock extraction, this is the primary source of human alterations of the phosphorus cycle. So imagine that there is already an annual growth rate of phosphate rock extraction that goes to 4.2% every year. Of course, we are considering the phosphorus that is being used for fertilizers, but phosphorus is encountered in detergents, pesticides, and other products that we use in our lives. Then the second one alteration is on crops cultivation with the phosphorus fertilizer application. The traditional crop farming relied on phosphorus in soil and local from recycled organic wastes, which is considered the main part of agricultural pattern for thousands of years. But the exponential increase of inorganic fertilizer application was what increased the consumption of phosphorus in the growth of food production in developed countries. But what is very interesting to see, the growth rate of phosphorus uptake in harvested crops was much lower than that of phosphorus fertilizer application, indicating a remarkable decrease of phosphorus use efficiency in crop farming. And this is highly related to the increased dependence on chemical phosphorus fertilizers, because these ones are less efficient to be for uptake. So here in this figure, what you can see is clearly the relationship between fertilizer input, the increase on fertilizer extraction from fertilizer, and the fertilizer coming from manure, and the phosphorus use efficiency, that it has clearly decreased in the past years. So an important way of reducing the amount of phosphorus that is being added to soils is to start thinking about how phosphorus can be added to or taken to by crops in a more efficient way. The decrease of phosphorus use efficiency is more significant in some developing countries like China, and who consumes 28% of the global phosphorus fertilizer. Another human alteration of the phosphorus cycle is on the livestock production and manure generation. Livestock products such as meat, milk, or eggs have increased by two-folds in the past 5 decades, and these have increased significantly the amount of phosphorus that is being required. It is more efficiency, the uptake of this phosphorus from livestock, but it's still very high. The other carrier of phosphorus is the animal excreta. And for the animal excreta, the problem is that sometimes it is accumulated in areas where cannot be used as fertilizer. So the problem here on the phosphorus cycle relies on the excessive mining of phosphorus, but also the inefficient recycling of phosphorus in the planet. So one of the examples is the manure generation. So globally, about 70% of poultry and 58% of pig products come from intensive systems. So it means that they're localized, and in many cases, these ones are actually not near farming areas. So, for instance, 50% of the global manure phosphorus is produced in only 13% of crop farming areas. And these are mainly in China, India, and the Northeast America, and also European Union and Brazil. So in many cases, it is economically impractical to recycle livestock manure beyond a certain radius because of the transport cost, and also because the availability of inorganic fertilizers that are cheaper than transporting manure. So globally, the manure that returns to cropland is about 50 to 60%. Another human alteration of the phosphorus cycle is the human consumption and waste generation. So since the human population has increased significantly, the amount of phosphorus that we require also has increased. And then, on the other hand, 98% of the daily ingested phosphorus is excreted. Imagine if we are 7.2 billion people across the world, and so how much phosphorus we are excreting. And the big problem is that only 20% of this human waste is recycled. The development of wastewater treatments have solved some environmental problems, but on the other hand, has concentrated all the phosphorus that could be used, or the human excreta that could be used as fertilizer. And the problem is that we're not recycling enough this phosphorus that is being wasted in wastewater. So in conclusion, human alterations have tripled the global phosphorus mobilization in land water continuum and increased phosphorus accumulation in soil. But a lot of questions remain about some sinks of phosphorus that are not clear, and also the interactions with the carbon and nitrogen cycle. So therefore, there's still a lot of research going on, and also research to improve recycling of phosphorus.